sunny Stellenbosch, South Africa. Today we're going to talk about curiosity. If you're studying abroad, you probably consider yourself to be curious, and I would agree. If curious means wanting to learn and being open to difference, then that's basically why students want to study abroad. In addition, we're sort of wired as human beings to be naturally curious. So why do we need a lesson on curiosity? Because I think there are 3 important approaches to curiosity that will enhance your experience and increase your intercultural competence. 1, be an active learner. 2, be willing to be uncomfortable. And 3, be an ethical traveler. What does it mean to be an active learner? If you're a successful student, one of the things you may have figured out along the way is that someone else will tell you what's important to learn. In many ways, traditional education quells curiosity rather than encourages it. Think about it. As children, we ask tons of questions, many of which exhaust parents because they're so complex or crazy that we don't even know how to answer. But as we begin going to school, we learn to sit and listen to answers rather than ask the questions ourselves. We learn to be passive recipients of information, reinforced every time we're told to sit still, be quiet, and do our homework. So by the time you're in college, you've probably spent 20,000 hours sitting and learning from a teacher. I'm not completely criticizing this. I'm an instructor myself. I write syllabi with learning outcomes and student action steps and class goals. I determine for my students what I want them to know, and I measure their learning. This is how we structure traditional education. But this doesn't necessarily translate well into travel abroad in intercultural contexts. As you travel, it becomes more and more incumbent upon you to figure out what you want to learn and how you can learn about it. You have to seek out new experiences and new information. You have to learn to ask questions and find answers in new ways. So you're living abroad and you're open to learning and you want to practice curiosity. So where do you start? We often start, of course, with visible culture. Food, dances, art, and other artifacts, things like that. This is a great place to start. This is not only easy for you to recognize, it's easy for your host to describe. They may be able to tell you historical information, interesting stories, or just even what this means to them or how they feel about it. And the more you ask people these questions, the more you interact with them and form rich pictures. In fact, I encourage you to ask different people the same question because first of all, it helps you tease out what's cultural and what's personal, but it also gives you a chance to practice adding complexity to your knowledge about the host. Still, changing from being a passive learner to an active learner can be hard. You may not know what to ask or what to seek out. So how can you actively seek out more? First, find what fascinates you. Second, try to do things that you don't know how to do. Third, ask questions. Fourth, go to people, not Google. And fifth, don't settle for complacency. Even in the most mundane situations, there's always something to look at or ponder or think about. But to begin to really make sense of your host, you'll need to explore invisible culture. And that can be hard for a number of reasons. First, of course, is that invisible culture, by its very nature, is harder to recognize. It's harder to get to know. We take so much for granted about ways of interacting, intentions, motivations, because our own are so ingrained in us. So we often don't think about what we don't know. We don't realize that there's something to learn. We feel confident in our current knowledge and our assumptions. We often assume that we know and understand things without realizing that we don't. We make assumptions based on our own cultural frameworks without looking to learn more. But we may also realize that there's something we don't know. And not knowing can feel uncomfortable. It means admitting ignorance and showing some lack, maybe even having our own foundations challenged. And that is often threatening. Learning about deeper aspects like values, norms, behaviors, and historical legacies can seem to threaten our own beliefs or understanding. So this leads to the next attribute. Be willing to be uncomfortable. Learning something new can challenge your sense of understanding, your sense of security, even your sense of identity. It can mean changing your perceptions or acknowledging your deficiencies. But being uncomfortable often leads to the most profound learning and biggest growth. Being uncomfortable means a lot of different things to different people. For some, it might just be simply the act of asking questions. For some, it may be interacting in a different way. For some, it might be listening without judgment. I'm not asking you to do things that are unsafe, but rather to do things that answer for you the question, how could I learn something new right now? How could I push myself? Imagine your current knowledge is a bowl of lettuce. Adding new ingredients to that lettuce can make it taste bad, or at least unfamiliar. And you might be really protective of your lettuce. You might think it tastes just fine the way it is. But you could also see new knowledge as new things to add to your lettuce, ways to enhance it and make it richer. Maybe in some cases, you replace some of the iceberg with some arugula. In other words, you reevaluate what you know and you replace it for new information. Or maybe it means simply adding tomatoes and cucumbers and some dressing to make it richer and more robust. In other words, enriching what you already know. The third leg of curiosity is being an ethical traveler. Many travelers want to seek out what they think is an authentic experience. It's important to realize, though, that in seeking out the authentic, we are often disrupting it. So it's our job to minimize our disruption as much as possible. Ethical travel is first and foremost withholding judgment. If you come to gawk and you come to judge, you are not curious. If you come to solely take pictures of what is the most different and to share those pictures out of context, you are not curious. You're simply nosy. To be curious, you must give the people and the experience dignity and worth. You must be open to connecting. It is only with this ethical and compassionate curiosity that we can truly learn the authentic. Curiosity is about seeking to understand, not just to observe. It means respecting local ways and local needs. Ethical travel and genuine curiosity means caring for the place as if it were your own home, and caring for the people as if they were your own people. In an intercultural setting, there is an additional challenge of recognizing that the way they treat their home and the way they treat one another may look different from your ways. Respecting local ways and local needs also means limiting your impact on natural resources. Thinking of water, electricity, food, for example. Be aware that, in the US in particular, we are quite wasteful of these resources. While you're traveling, think about ways to limit your impact. Maybe use your own tote bags to carry things, take public transportation when you can, turn off lights, and take short showers. Ask before taking pictures, particularly of children. Think about the context before you share photos, and be careful of the ways that you might be perpetuating unfair stereotypes. Think about equalizing your relationships. Often when we travel, we have very transactional relationships. I pay you money, you give me services. And people put up with a lot to earn money, a lot that's very unfair and is not authentic. There is almost always a hierarchy in place when there's an exchange of money, with the person giving the money having more power than the person doing the services. But that doesn't mean that we treat people who provide services for us as servants. Treat people with respect and dignity. Compassionate curiosity comes from a place of genuine humility, a desire to learn, a desire to change either your mind or your habits, or both. So now we return to the question, how to be curious. Ask people about their daily experiences. What gives them joy and pleasure? What causes them stress and anxiety? What do they wish was different about their world, about their community? What do they strive for? Ask them deeper questions. What are their rites of passage? How do they signal move from one stage of life to the next stage of life? How do they honor other people? Try doing things that you don't know how to do. It will feel awkward, but you learn from that experience of putting yourself out there and trying. Often it's what allows you to make connections with other people and allows them to help you. You may wonder about how to be curious in situations where it might feel intrusive to ask questions, or where you're not even sure what kinds of questions to ask or how to approach people for information. My advice is to start with good intentions, to be humble and to be open. People can see when you're being genuinely curious, not flippant or judgmental. Use open-ended questions like, "I'm wondering about," or "Could you tell me about?" This allows the other person to steer the conversation and share what they feel most comfortable with. As you practice these skills in intercultural settings, you'll also be more comfortable with them in settings at home, which can only lead to good things. Seeking out knowledge, asking questions, attempting to find connections all lead to good things.